Hello, homies, and welcome to day 6 of World Homeopathy Awareness Week, where we'll be releasing a new episode every day from 10 to 16 April to celebrate the birthday of the founder of homeopathy, Samuel Hahnemann, who was born on 10 April 1755. Today is the 4th of our series of 5 episodes where you'll hear from mothers who use homeopathy. Today, you'll hear from 2 very special mothers, Kathrin and Brooke. Here in Australia, homeopathy is sadly not very well known. Believe me, I'm trying to fix that. But when you hear from somebody like Kathrin, who grew up in Germany, where homeopathy was born and where it is still used very widely, even by medical doctors 200 years later, it's hard not to feel a little bit sad about how far behind we are down under. I really hope these daily podcasts during Homeopathy Awareness Week, where you'll get to hear from real mothers telling their real stories of how homeopathy has helped them, will inspire you to try this amazing natural medicine for yourself and tell your friends and family. I'm so grateful to the lovely Brooke as well for sharing her story with us today. We were introduced to each other a couple of years ago by a fellow Kiwi, also named Brooke, and it's been an incredible journey seeing Brooke's gorgeous little boy grow up and now having the pleasure of having met her beautiful little baby girl as well. This is absolutely the best part of my job, when I get to work with mothers during preconception, pregnancy and birth, and then you get to see this new little special person entering the world and watching them thrive. So Kathrin and Brooke, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. I know it's going to inspire so many other people to give homeopathy a try.
Hi, Eugenie. I thought I'm going to share some of my experiences too with homeopathy. So for me, I've grown up in Germany and probably been lucky because I guess over there it's used a lot. So anyway, as a child, I've had one middle ear infection after another, and of course always had antibiotics used for that until we moved house and found a new GP, and this GP also used homeopathy. So it turned out one lot of her remedies, and I have never had a middle ear infection since. I still remember as a child having to always wear beanies or cotton wool in my ears just to try and not get any more infections and stuff. And none of that seemed to help. As far as I remember back, that was my first time that I remember using homeopathy. I don't think there were any big wow moments in the teenager years and all that. I'm sure I've used them plenty because I know my mum has got a big cupboard full of them. The next one that was quite a big wowing, I guess, was when I came to Australia. I've always been really, really homesick as a child. In fact, I could never even go with my grandma and grandpa on a little weekend getaway. I still remember going into the car with them and I had to come back out because I just was screaming and crying and I wouldn't settle, so I had to stay home. While my brother, 3.5 years younger, just went with them. Unfortunately, it wasn't until quite some years later when my mum came across the remedy Ignatia, I started using that. So anytime I felt a bit homesick, I used that one, and it's worked amazingly. Like, I would go from a absolute sobbing mess, so distraught, so sad and feeling so hollow in the gut, to just, I don't know, after maybe 2 or 3 doses, back to being normal, happy, and enjoying being where I am. And it was funny actually, because when I announced that I would go to Australia, I think my whole family made bets on how fast I would come home, and they would all tease me and say, well, you do realize it's a long flight and all that kind of stuff. And I said, no, I'll be fine. I've been in Australia now for, 15 years, and I've never had homesickness. And anytime I do feel a bit sad or something, I do still use Ignatia for other things. But I never needed it for homesickness again. So that is amazing. Yeah, so then I've had lots of health problems along the way. But after having a few miscarriages and all that, the doctor said, let's remove those fibroids. And I had an open abdominal surgery for that. They removed quite a few fibroids. And after the surgery, I used homeopathy mainly, plus the odd paracetamol to help with the pain. But it was really, really amazing to be in control of what goes into my body and know that homeopathy can basically, replace all of that. And I healed very, very well. Basically, it was so easy, the recovery and all that that when I then finally fell pregnant with our gorgeous daughter, and I did need a C-section, I knew that beforehand already because of the open abdominal and removing so many fibroids. There were too many scars, that the surgeon said the safest way is a C-section. And this C-section was only maybe a year and a half after I had those fibroids removed, so it was quite a new or quite a recent previous surgery, so I really didn't want to take any chances. I had my little kit full of remedies because of the open abdominal surgery already, plus I added a few more that would help with the C-section related things. Basically what had happened is that I went in, I had the C-section in the morning, and I was moved to my room with our daughter, and my husband was there. And the nurses came in and said, okay, you would be due for your pain meds now. Would you like some? And I said, no, I'm actually okay. And I've obviously had all my remedies with me, and I used them as I needed them. Some of them, of course, I used anyway, just like the Nux vomica to help with the anesthesia and all that kind of stuff. So I used what I had, and they kept coming in saying, look, the morphine will wear off soon and you'll be in a world of pain, and you really need to take some pain meds now. And I said, look, I've got all this, I'm okay for now. And I said, well, if any of the pain starts, like if I feel just the slightest anything, I will let you know, and I will be straight on the bell to ring you and give me the pain meds. Well, I don't know how often they came in because I was in this haze, I guess, of being a new mom. But to me, it felt like, I don't know, way too often. They just kept coming in. And every time there was a new nurse and a swap over time, the new nurse would come in with the older, or with the previous on-call nurse, basically. And they would then explain, this is the patient. This patient does not want any pain meds. She's got all her other natural remedies, and she's refusing to take pain meds. But they did mention also that I will let them know when I do need it and all that kind of stuff. Basically, I made it all that day. So the surgery was booked in 8 a.m. and all that day was fine. All that night was fine. The next day, still fine. I was still just on all my remedies, and they just could not believe it. By then I had made the rounds. Everyone in the hospital, I think, or at least on that level, knew about me. I'm the one that didn't want pain meds. I'm the one that came out of surgery after having a C-section and didn't want any painkillers. It was quite, I guess by then I actually thought it was quite funny. And so finally the catheter came out. I was able to walk around. So 2 days later I was finally able to go home, which already, like they said to me at the start, even before the C-section, that I would probably be in hospital for 4 or 5 days. And I thought, oh gosh, like hospital really gives me, I don't know, makes me stress, I suppose, probably because of the pushiness of those nurses. Luckily, I had the support of my husband, and everything went smoothly, actually. And I did end up asking for a painkiller, not because of the C-section, though, but because of the terrible latch issues I had with my daughter. So my breasts were just incredibly sore. I wish now that I knew what I knew then, now, to know that, obviously going back a couple of years now, but if I ever had another baby, I would be even more prepared for that then. And in fact, that painkiller did nothing to help with the nipple pain at that stage anyway. But I was absolutely distraught and desperate for something. So that was the C-section. And I literally, 2 days later, I put on my jeans. In fact, the jeans that I wore pre-pregnancy, I suppose, or nearly pre-pregnancy, I put them on and I walked out of there. And they couldn't believe it. It was absolutely mind-blowing, even to myself, to know that they have cut, 7 layers or something, and stitched you up again. And I was absolutely fine with just homeopathy. This is how powerful this stuff can be. I mean, I know there's many that say, oh, it doesn't contain anything or whatever. But in the end, how can this be possible if this was not working? I mean, who can walk out of a C-section and say, I didn't need any painkillers? So to me, this is absolutely proof that this works. And it's just magic. And knowing that I have no side effects from any of these remedies, it doesn't matter how often I take them, I think is the biggest win. Because obviously if you take paracetamol or any of those, you have to watch, you can't take it more often than, every 4 hours or whatever it is. Can't take many more than X tablets in a day and all that kind of stuff. With homeopathy, you don't have to worry about any of that. By now, because I've been using it basically all my life, I do a lot with just feel So even if, for example, my daughter, if she falls over or something, has a scrape, I give it to her, and quite often I would give her another lot already just as she has finished suckling the first lot. So as much as it says, every 10 to 15 minutes, don't worry about it. If your daughter is still upset, or your child is still upset, or you're still upset, in fact, or something has happened, you're still in pain, just take it again. You can't overdo it. And yeah, often obviously I would have to reassess, and after 4 to 6 doses I would go, nothing's actually changed, and I would try something else. So there is no contraindication of you can't try this next one because you've just had the first one or something. Just give something else a go. And I think it's sort of one of those where you have to be confident to just give it a go. I don't think you can do anything wrong, even with the potencies, be it a 200 potency even. I was quite worried about that at the start, but now, no worries whatsoever. I just use whatever I have. If I don't have the lower potency, then I will just use the higher one and see how I go. So ever since we've been using this for teething, oh my gosh, we had such a drama time with teething. And unfortunately, what I guess the sleep-deprived mum did not realise is that I was on the wrong remedy with my daughter. We used a teething complex, which had some effect, but not enough. Chamomilla is the usual one, but it did not work for her. And we actually ended up giving her the normal kid Nurofen Panadol stuff, and I felt absolutely terrible doing this. But I was also so sleep deprived with all this being up and nursing just about 24/7 that I just didn't compute, I guess. My head just wouldn't work. I guess that is probably the biggest letdown for me, that I sometimes don't realize that I need help from outside. So when you think something isn't working, the remedy isn't the right one, and it's just having no effect, obviously I don't discredit homeopathy then, but I get distraught and I don't know what to do then. I get stuck. So this is where I guess being able to ask, especially in Eugenie's Facebook group, is just amazing. And you can literally go on there at any time of the day and you will know somebody will write back at some stage. The one that we probably use the most is the ACH combo, which is Arnica, Hypericum and Chamomilla. I like having a daughter, a very, I call her my crazy toddler, because she's incredibly boisterous, but also like she climbs on the highest things, whatever she can find. And this started already before she could even crawl, actually. So we had to use this mix a lot. And just recently she actually tumbled down some steps and landed on a concrete ground, and instantly a big egg came up on her forehead. It looked terrible. There was no blood, but the biggest egg on her forehead, and she was actually quite upset. And so we gave her the ACH. She stopped crying instantly. We got like a little boo-boo bag that we put on there, like a little cooler bag, and put that on her head, and I just kept giving her the ACH. Didn't take long, and not only did the egg disappear nearly, like there was just the slightest little lump left, but she was basically back to normal. And that was crazy. The silly thing is that I didn't continue on. I should have continued on the next day, even though we couldn't see any obvious distress or any obvious problems with her head, because the day after I noticed the swelling came back a little bit. So we jumped back onto the remedies, and it helped very quickly again. But I guess you kind of sort of forget, I suppose, because when it's not obvious in your face that something is wrong, then you kind of forget. But even then, again, no problems. Homeopathy can still fix it. So I mean, these are the biggest things that have happened in the recent years. But there's always a remedy where I need to really, what I want to get. What's on my list right now is a long list, but one of the things is coffea for the inability to fall asleep because your mind is racing. And I keep thinking, the funny thing is I keep thinking that when I lay in bed. Of course, in the morning I get up and I forget to order it, and I just think I should just put an order in straight away. So those are the things where you just, having the right remedy again on hand makes all the difference. I share this with everyone. We haven't used any vaccinations with our daughter, and we've just used the homeoprophylaxis prescribed by Isaac Golden. So far, she's been a very healthy child. In fact, quite often we can go anywhere, even if there's snotty, coughing kids or something around us, she is fine. So her immune system, I think, is very good. Unlike my own, I guess all these antibiotics that I had to take from early on have really destroyed my gut. So that is still work in progress. But I have no doubt we'll get there eventually. Thank you for listening.
Hello everybody, I just wanted to share a few success stories that I've had using homeopathy. The first that I can remember is going back to when I was probably around the age of 20, I'm now 34, where I had a reaction to wine. I had a known grape allergy, but my flatmate, who was a chef at the time, he cooked a roast lamb for us, and I didn't even think to ask what he had marinated it in, but he had used red wine, and I ate it and didn't think anything of it. We went off to the hot pool shortly after we had finished the dinner, and anyway, a friend of mine that I was with, one of my best friends, she started to panic and said, "Don't freak out, but your face is swollen, your lips are swollen, you have a red welting rash all over your body." And then I looked down and I saw that, yep, I had welts everywhere and they were starting to really get super itchy. So she took me to her mum's house, who was actually training to be a homeopath. This was when we were living in Tauranga, New Zealand, and she immediately gave me what I think is probably Apis. I haven't actually spoken to her about it, so I'd be really interested to know, but I think it was Apis, and also like a lotion she'd put onto a cotton pad. She sprayed something on me and then put another lotion on, and I think from memory it was maybe stinging nettle. I just recall that she used something like that. But yeah, within moments the rash was coming down, my face wasn't so swollen, and after a few more doses I was almost back to normal. So that was the very first thing I kind of remember about homeopathy. I've always had a really open mind to natural medicine. My mum often used Chinese herbs and medicines on us, so I've always had an open mind. But then I would say I did, for some reason, I don't know, I don't even recall buying it, but I did have arnica and I did have calendula in my cupboard that I must have bought at a health store for something at some point. And when I had my second son and I was recovering from that birth, I used arnica and calendula that I had in the cupboard, and my midwife had actually said to me, "Oh, you should use that." And I said, "Oh, well, I actually have some." And she's very into natural remedies and things, and a big advocate also for homeopathy. And she actually said, you know, it would be handy to see one for your son. He was showing symptoms of colic quite early on. He didn't have colic, but had a number of other things going on. So a lovely friend of mine here in Perth put me in touch with the wonderful, amazing, incredible Eugenie, who then we had a consult with, and she really was the turning point for us. Had I not met her at that point in time, I really worry for my son's health and well-being. My son had had a vaccine reaction, a very severe vaccine reaction. At the time, a lot of professionals were, well, they still are, not prepared to acknowledge that it was a vaccine reaction, although we have had MRIs on his brain because of it. They were unsure whether he had had a stroke following it or whether they may have been seizures that have caused this. We've had lots of ongoing issues, but Eugenie has been there for us. I came to meet her around about the age of 2 months old of my son, so thankfully she just gave me the confidence in what I already knew, to trust my own instincts, and she just really validated that for me. And hearing that from a professional like Eugenie, one that's obviously not in the Western medicine, but from the Western point of view, I was made to kind of think that everything was fine and normal and healthy, and that was a good reaction and response. So yeah, that was a huge turning point for me, and I just really hate to think about what might have happened had I continued down that route for my son. But Eugenie giving us the tools of how to use homeopathy, seeing it for myself, and just knowing that I have that behind me is a really powerful thing as a mother, and I just feel so empowered Some of the success stories I've had with it, both my children were born with quite severe, well, extremely severe cradle cap, to the point where it was like thick crust, I would say, probably 5 millimeters, if not more, thicker in a crust. A lot of it was really weepy and pussy, and it was just horrible. And as soon as I sent Eugenie a picture of my daughter's cradle cap, she knew straight away what remedy to give us. It was Ant Crude or Ant Crud, not sure how to say that one. And within a few days, I could notice a difference. The weeping had stopped. It started to get thinner. It started to thin out, get flaky around the edges, and the not so thick parts started to fall away quite quickly. It took a good 2 months to completely clear every single part of it. There were some really hardcore thick parts, and when they came off, it literally pulled all of the hair away from her scalp with it. That's how thick it was, and her hair couldn't grow through it, and same as my son. But that was just such a wonderful thing to see with your eyes, because, you know, if you ever needed a convincing of what homeopathy can do, I mean, you may have a sore throat, take aconite or belladonna or whatever the remedy is, a sore throat mix for it, and it's gone. Others can't see that, so it's hard to, not that I've had very many people that I've needed to convince, but it's just so reassuring to see what it can do with your own eyes, in front of your own eyes. Another one example of that, being able to see something with your own eyes, is when I had a prolapse after my second birth with my daughter. I had quite a severe prolapse, and one dose of sepia, literally it almost disappeared, and I just actually could not even believe that myself, that one dose of a remedy could kind of pull your muscles back to where they were meant to be. It was just amazing and fascinating to see that, especially so quickly. And after a week of that, it's pretty much gone. I continued dosing twice a day for 2 weeks, and have not had an issue since, touch wood. But if I did ever again, I would just again repeat the sepia. So they've been incredible ones to see firsthand. I use them acutely for colds, coughs, sore throats. I've had repeated sore throats my entire life. I had tonsillitis 13 times in 1 year, and at that point my mum was just so over it, because I just had it constantly all of my childhood, that I had my tonsils removed, but every time I'm run down or sick or tired, I just immediately feel it in my throat. So the sore throat mix I just can't live without that. Another one is Cantharis. I also used to really suffer from UTIs, urine infections, and since having that on hand, the minute I feel this may be something, I take it, completely gone, vanishes. My mum, my sisters all have reoccurring issues with this, but since I've had Cantharis, I've never had a urine infection. I've also given it to my son when I've suspected maybe he could, when he's had reduced wet nappies or things like that. So some remedies that I just could not live without. Apis, definitely. Reactions, my son, he's been stung by bees a number of times. We have lots of allergies in my family, including my sister, who is anaphylactic to bees. My son was stung on his finger, and by the time I'd walked to get the bottle of Apis, his end of his finger was like not quite a golf ball, but it was a really large swollen ball at the end of his finger. I gave 1 dose of that. By 2 doses, he had stopped crying in pain. The redness was starting to go down, and then after 6 doses, his finger was basically back to normal. And I just continued to dose throughout that day, and by the time he went to bed, you wouldn't have even known he was stung by a bee. So Apis I would not live without. I've got 3 bottles, 1 at my son's childcare, and multiple spread around the home and in the car. I just think that it's such a powerful tool to have. I couldn't live with aconite, belladonna, chamomilla for teething. Oh my goodness, my children have been awful teethers. So chamomilla, the ABC combo has been great. Another one is Nux vomica, just for sore tummies. It helped me somewhat in my morning sickness for overindulgence, which, oh goodness, Have been dosing her as well with some Hepasulfur for her cough and some other remedies. Yeah, I would say they would be the main ones that I couldn't go without, but I just cannot rave enough about homeopathy to everyone, anyone that wants to listen. A mother from my mother's group who is very pro-Western medicine, which I completely get that there's a need for that. She was getting mastitis and her son has had a number of issues. I dropped some belladonna off and said, no pressure, just try it if you want to. This is how you dose it. She did it, dosed it, mastitis went away, and she didn't have to resort to antibiotics. Neither of my children have ever had medicine. My son is 2.5 and has not even so much had Panadol because of the use of, I put that down to homeopathy. He does eat a well-balanced diet and I do use other things, but homeopathy has really saved us. He's not had antibiotics, even though he has been recommended this a number of times for different reasons. So yeah, I am so passionate about this, and I have everything. Eugenie, I just cannot thank her enough for sharing her wisdom, and her passion really comes across, and she is so compassionate and willing to help anybody, everybody, and it's just amazing. And I really thank you, Eugenie, for this journey that you've put me on. It's just the most wonderful gift as a mother to have something like this in your corner, having homeopathy remedies there. It's just, yeah, I just can't be more grateful. So, yeah, a few little stories to share, and thank you so much for listening.